Hi class, this is lesson 7.3, factoring x squared plus bx plus c. So if you remember back from lesson chapter 6, we learned how to multiply two binomials using something called FOIL. Now FOIL, remember that it's just a way to organize our multiplying when we use the distributive property. So it's just a technique to use. So today we're going to be going backwards from FOIL. So remember FOIL, we would start with maybe something like this. And we would do our first, outside, inside, last, multiplying our different terms. And then we'd end up with something like this. So today we're going to be going backwards from that. So we're going to start with something that looks like this, and we're going to end with something that looks like this. Okay, so down here we are going to start by making our two binomials. Now, if we look at FOIL, we start by multiplying our first terms. And our first terms always will multiply to equal this first term here. So I need to be thinking to myself, okay, what times what will give me x squared? Well, that should be x times x. So I'm going to start with x's out in front. Now, when I go to do my outer and inner parts of FOIL, I end up adding those together, and then that gives me this middle term here. Okay, so I need to think of two numbers that are going to add to equal 15, but they also need to multiply, for my last terms, they need to multiply to give me 36. So I need to be thinking, okay, what times what will give me 36, but yet will also add to give me 15. So I'm going to start by listing out my factors of 36. So I know 1 times 36, 2 times 18, 3 times 12, 4 times 9, and 6 times 6. Those all work to multiply to give me 36. However, I need to think, okay, which ones of these will also add to give me 15? And when I do that, this becomes my answer. 3 times 12 gives me 36, but 3 plus 12 also gives me that 15 that I'm looking for. So my answer should be x plus 3 and x plus 12. Now the cool thing about this is I can always go back and check by doing the opposite, by foiling. So if I go back and check with FOIL, I do my first terms, x times x, x squared. My outsides gives me 12x. My insides give me a 3x. And then my last terms, 3 times 12, gives me 36. And then if I combine my like terms, I'm left with x squared plus 15x plus 36, this is exactly where I started in my original problem. So that way I know I did it right. Okay, on your quiz you are going to have several problems like this, and you are going to be required to check it. So make sure you know, remember how to FOIL, look back at that, and remember how to write that out to check. Okay, let's try another one. Okay, I'm going to start with my two binomials, and again, I know my first terms need to multiply to give me an x squared, so my go-to is x times x. Okay, now I need to think to myself, okay, what are some factors of 24 that would add to give me 10? So I'm going to list out my factors of 24. 1 times 24, 2 times 12, 3 times 8, and 4 times 6. So those all multiply to give me 24, but which ones add to give me 10? Well, that would be 4 and 6. So I should have a positive 4 and a positive 6 here then. Again, I can check by foiling, or another way to quickly check is, okay, 4 times 6, my last terms give me 24, and then 4 plus 6 gives me my 10. Okay, try this one on your own, and then I'm going to talk about the next one here, because this one's a little bit different, because you notice that now we have a minus sign here instead of two plus signs. So we're still going to start the same way. I still know that x times x is going to give me my x squared, so I'm going to start with that. Now this time I need factors of 30, but those factors of 30 need to add together to give me a negative 11. So that means I am going to need to have some negative factors of 30. So that means both of my factors need to be negative, because when I take a negative times a negative, That gives me my positive 30, but when I add those together, they leave me with a negative number still. Okay, so I could do negative 30 times negative 1. I could do negative 15 times negative 2. I could do negative 10 times negative 3. And I could do negative 5 times negative 6. All of those multiply to give me a positive 30 since they're both negative. Now, which ones of those add to give me a negative 11 though? Hopefully you saw that. It should be negative 5 and negative 6. So in my parentheses, I'm going to have a negative 5 and a negative 6. Remember, quick way to check is to either FOIL, or the even quicker way, negative 5 times negative 6 gets me my positive 30. Negative 5 plus a negative 6 leaves me with my negative 11. Okay. I want you to try these 4 and these 6 on your own. Make sure you watch out which ones are going to be the negatives, and then the rest of them are all positive. So try those out and then check them with my answer key. Okay, and then here is your first homework assignment that we did the first day after this. The second half of the lesson then we did the next day, but I'm going to go ahead and go over that here quickly too. Okay, these ones, you're going to start them the exact same way, only notice that this time now the negative sign is in a different place. So I'm still going to start with my two binomials. I know that I still need to multiply to give me an x squared, so I'm going to start with x and x. Now this time the big difference is that I need to multiply to get me to a negative number. So I know that a positive times a negative is what gets me my negative number. So I'm still going to start with my factors of 20, except I need them to multiply to give me a negative 20. And remember, there's an invisible 1 there. They need to add to give me 1 then. So when I list out my factors, I could do negative 20 times a positive 1 to get me my negative 20. Or I could do a negative 1 times a positive 20 to get me my negative 20. Both of these combinations would work to get me a negative 20. Okay, so basically when you have it like this, you basically have twice as many combinations you need to sort through to see which one will work. So I could do 20 times 1, switching the negative. I could do negative 2 times 10, or a positive 2 times 10. I could do a negative 5 times 4, or a negative 4 times 5. Any of those would work. But then my big question becomes, which one together they add to equal a positive 1? In that case, it would be this one. 5 plus negative 4 gets me a positive 1. So I would have x minus 4 in one binomial and x plus 5 in the other. Okay, remember, quick check. Negative 4 times 5 gets me my negative 20. Negative 4 plus 5 gets me my positive 1. Okay, remember you can FOIL it out as well in order to check. Okay, and then the last kind of problem we're going to do is this one where we've got negatives on both of them. Okay, so start it the same way. I know that x times x is going to get me my x squared, so we're both going to start with x. This time I need to list out my factors of negative 18. So I could do negative 1 times a positive 18, negative 18 times a positive 1, excuse me. I could do positive 2 times negative 9. I could do a negative 2 times a positive 9. Or I could do a negative 3 times a positive 6 and negative 6 times a positive 3. Any of those would be workable combinations. However, remember that I want them to add this time to equal a negative 3. So the one that would work this time would be this last one here. So I'm going to have a negative 6 and a positive 3. So let's check it. Negative 6 times positive 3 gets me negative 18. And then negative 6 plus 3 gets me my negative 3. So it's very similar to this last problem we did, only this time we're adding to give a negative number as well. Okay. I want you to go ahead and finish up those next two on your own. And go ahead and try the ones on this page as well. Okay, and then the last thing we're going to go over today is problems like these. So right here, this is just showing you that the trinomial version and the factored form into the two binomials should be equivalent to each other. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this trinomial, this y squared plus 10y plus 21, and I'm going to factor that. Okay, again, I know y times y is what will give me my y squared, and then I should be thinking to myself, okay, what numbers multiply to give me 21, but add to give 7? Once you get really fast at these, you'll be able to do them in your head without even listing out the factors. So in this case, I know it's going to be 7 and 3. So 7 times 3 gets me my 21. 7 plus 3 leaves me with 10. So over here then, I'm going to put my y plus 7 and my y plus 3. Okay, and then I'm going to just plug in 0 for both of these. I'm going to plug in 0 for y and evaluate that. So on this one, I've got 0 plus 7, which is 7, 0 plus 3, which is 3, and then 7 times 3 gets me 21. Over here, I'm going to do the same thing, plugging in 0 for y, and when I evaluate that, I get 21. So I get the same thing I did on the first one there. Okay, let's try it with 1 now. So 1 plus 7 and 1 plus 3, so I'm going to have 8 times 4 gets me 32. Plug in 1 over here as well. Okay, I'm going to end up with 1 squared is 1, plus 10 times 1 is 10, so 1 plus 10 is 11. 11 plus 21 gets me 32, so the same as over on the left side there. Okay, you do have a couple quiz questions that are like this, so make sure you know how to do these. I want you on your own to go ahead and finish these up, and then I want you to do this next one on your own as well. So and on the one hand here, you'll put the trinomial version, and then over here, after you've factored it, you'll put the factored version, and you'll do the same thing. You're just going to plug in the numbers they give you in for n or y or whatever the variable may be. So try that out, and then make sure you check your answers with my answer key when you're all done.